I do believe that sustainability is taken much more seriously now than it was 10 years ago. In fact, sustainability or sustainable investment was practically unknown, I would say, a decade ago in virtually all the countries in Asia. Perhaps Australia was a bit better, perhaps Japan better than average, but certainly in Hong Kong, Singapore and other Asian countries, sustainable investment wasn't something that was really discussed or known or understood. So certainly we have progressed since then in that there is a fair amount of discussion and there is a certain amount of investment taking place using sustainable principles. I certainly think that ASrIA has raised the level of consciousness on sustainability and the need to preserve a lot of the resources on this earth and to behave with the highest possible standards in business and every other way. So it's not always easy to measure, but I do believe that ASrIA has certainly been a force for good in the last decade in Asia. I think many fund managers are using some form of sustainability screen when they're assessing the merits of all sorts of different stocks. But unless or until we have the really large forces, the pension funds, insurance companies, perhaps particularly sovereign wealth funds, other government sources of money, until they've got sustainability high on their agenda and until we've got a rather different environment from what we have today, fund management performance is still far too often judged on a short-term basis, and that is not really in keeping with sustainability investment. People tend to look at short-term performance in China. They tend to look at one calendar year performance, and they'll give rewards if the performance is good. If the performance is not good, then the manager gets sacked and probably gets no fee for his work in the past year. So there's a long way to go, particularly in China, I feel, in order to educate people to the merits of, and not just the merits, to the necessity in this finite world. I've taken a very great interest in the pension reforms going on in China, but we can think of PRC in another way: P for population growth, R for resource exhaustion, and C for climate change. And one way of looking at all of this is that we're going to have to absolutely redouble our efforts to counter resource exhaustion. We're going to have to do whatever we possibly can to slow down and eventually reverse the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And this is going to become more and more difficult. United Nations is now projecting over 9 billion people, almost 9.5 billion population by the middle of this century. So the sheer weight of population and an increasing proportion of the population wanting to live an affluent life like Americans, basically that is going to make the control of climate change and preservation of resources exceedingly difficult.